The stars outside drifted like cold diamonds as Daniel's small shuttle docked against the alien vessel. From a distance, the ship had looked like a dead husk, silent, drifting with no lights, no signals. But as his craft connected and the hatch slid open, a chill ran through his body. The air that spilled out was stale, metallic, heavy, like breathing in dust from a tomb. He hesitated, one hand on the doorway, staring into the dark corridor that stretched beyond. The silence was so deep it almost felt alive, as though something waited in the shadows. Daniel stepped inside. His boots echoed against the metal floor, each step bouncing down the hallways. He moved slowly, his flashlight cutting across the walls. Strange alien markings glowed faintly, carved into the ship's structure. They were symbols he did not understand, pulsing faintly like veins carrying light. Every few seconds, his mind whispered the same warning: turn back, but he had come too far. He had seen this ship drifting from his shuttle's window, and something inside him demanded answers. The corridor stretched endlessly, filled with the faint hum of failing systems. Loose wires hung from the ceiling, sparking once in a while, throwing ghostly shadows across the walls. Daniel's chest tightened. He had boarded derelict ships before, but this one felt different. This was not a simple wreck. This was a graveyard waiting for him to step deeper into its heart. As he walked, he noticed the faintest sound, soft as breath. At first, he thought it was the groan of the ship. But then he stopped, holding his breath. There it was again. Faint, broken, almost like a human voice. His pulse quickened. Someone, or something, was still alive inside. He followed the sound, turning down a narrow passage that opened into a larger chamber. The room was dimly lit by broken panels flickering on and off. In the center lay a figure, half hidden in shadow. Daniel froze. It was a woman. At least, it looked like one. She was taller than him, her body wrapped in a strange suit of red and gold armor that seemed more like a second skin than clothing. Parts of it were cracked and shattered, revealing violet skin that glowed faintly beneath. She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling, her eyes half closed. And her leg, Daniel's gaze dropped to it, was twisted unnaturally. Armor. Shards dug into the wound and dark liquid pooled around her. It was not human blood. Daniel's mind screamed at him to back away. She was alien, dangerous, a warrior of some kind. Yet something held him in place. She looked fragile in that moment, broken, in pain. His human instinct, the one thing he could never bury, told him to help. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped closer. The alien woman's eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. She stared at him, her gaze sharp and unblinking. Daniel raised both his hands, speaking softly. "I don't mean harm. I want to help." His voice echoed in the chamber. She said nothing, only watched, her breathing rough, uneven. Kneeling, beside her, Daniel studied the wound. The leg was broken badly, the kind of injury that would cripple anyone. He reached toward it, then hesitated. Her eyes never left his, burning into him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Still, he pressed on, placing his hands near the wound to check the damage. The moment his skin brushed against her, the air shifted. A low hum filled the chamber, the walls trembling faintly. Daniel frowned, looking around. It felt like the ship itself had responded to his touch. The alien woman's eyes narrowed, but she did not stop him. Carefully, he began to massage around the wound, trying to ease the tension, trying to do something, anything, to help. He was no doctor, no soldier, just an engineer with basic survival training. But he could not walk away from someone suffering. Her skin was strange, cool, almost vibrating with hidden energy. The glow beneath her armor pulsed brighter with every movement of his hands. For a moment, Daniel thought he was helping. Her breathing slowed slightly, her eyes softened. He allowed himself a brief hope. But then, something shifted. Her body tensed suddenly, every muscle tightening. Before he could react, her hand shot forward, gripping his wrist like iron. The strength in her fingers was unnatural, crushing, yet controlled. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his throat. Her eyes blazed now, glowing brighter than before, and strange markings appeared along her skin, lighting up like fire spreading through veins. She whispered something, low and sharp, in a language he did not know. The sound was like a growl wrapped in a song, alien and terrifying. Daniel's heart pounded. His flashlight flickered, the chamber growing darker around them. The hum of the ship grew louder, as though it too was responding to her. Daniel realized, then with a shiver running down his spine, this was no ordinary reaction. This was not the pain of a wound. This was something else, something hidden in her very being. And by touching her, he had awakened it. The silence of the ship was gone now. The air itself seemed alive, trembling, filled with unseen energy. And Daniel, kneeling beside this wounded alien woman, felt the first taste of a fate far larger than himself. Daniel's heart pounded as the alien woman's grip tightened around his wrist. Her strength was terrifying, far beyond anything human. For a moment he thought she would crush the bones in his hand. But then her glowing eyes softened, and she released him. The strange markings along her violet skin faded slightly, though. The air still buzzed with invisible energy. He pulled his hand back slowly, his breath unsteady. She was no ordinary being. Every instinct told him to run, to leave her lying there on the cold floor of the ship. Yet something kept him in place. She was injured. Her leg was twisted at an angle that made his stomach turn. No matter what she was, human compassion pushed him forward again. Daniel swallowed hard and spoke, his voice calm but uncertain. "You're hurt. I can help, if you let me." Her head tilted slightly as though she understood something in his tone. Then, with effort, she shifted her body and leaned against the wall. Her movements were sharp, almost regal, even in weakness. She was a warrior. That much was clear. Daniel reached toward her leg once more, his fingers brushing against the torn edge of her armor. The golden plating cracked like brittle glass, revealing more of that glowing skin beneath. It pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. He hesitated, wondering if he was staring at blood or energy itself. Her eyes never left his face. She studied him in silence, her gaze filled with suspicion. Yet when he pressed his hand gently against the swollen flesh, she did not pull away. Her body trembled, and her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Daniel forced himself to focus. He massaged the muscles around the break, careful not to move the bone. The technique was crude, but it was all he knew. His father had once taught him how to treat a sprain back on Earth, and now, deep in space, those same lessons guided him. Her breathing shifted, slower, steadier. For a brief second, Daniel felt relief. Maybe he was helping. Maybe she was letting him. Then it happened again. Her body shuddered violently, her hand shooting out to grip his shoulder. Daniel froze, his pulse racing. Her glowing eyes widened, but this time there was no anger. Instead, there was something else, fear. She whispered in a language he could not understand, words sharp and strange. The sound echoed around the chamber, bouncing off the metal walls like music made of shadows. Daniel's skin prickled. He didn't know what she was saying, but he felt the weight of it deep inside his bones. Then suddenly she spoke in broken human tongue. "Touch means bond." Daniel blinked, confused. "Bond?" She nodded slowly, pain etched in every movement. "Not heal. Sacred. You and I. Linked." Her voice cracked, and she winced in pain. Daniel pulled his hand back quickly, his mind reeling. He hadn't just touched her wound. He had done something far greater, something dangerous. The ship seemed to respond again. The walls humming louder, lights flickering as if alive. He stumbled back, staring at her. "I didn't know," he whispered. Her gaze locked on his, unyielding. Now, too late. Daniel's stomach dropped. What had he done? He had only wanted to help, but now the air between them was thick, charged with something unseen. His chest tightened as he realized her words carried more than superstition. Whatever bond she spoke of, it was real. The alien woman shifted, dragging herself upright with surprising strength. She leaned against the wall, towering over him even in her weakened state. Her armor glowed faintly, responding to her heartbeat. She spoke again, her words halting but heavy. You touched sacred wound. Now, my fate and yours, tied. Daniel's mind spun. He looked at her broken leg, then back to her blazing eyes. He had walked into a silent ship searching for answers. Instead, he had bound himself to an alien warrior whose power was far beyond his understanding. She reached for him again, her fingers brushing his chest. Daniel shivered at the contact. Her touch was cold, yet a strange warmth spread through his body, a pulse that matched the rhythm of her glowing skin. For a moment, he felt as if something alive had entered him, an energy that was not his own. He staggered back, clutching his chest. His breath came fast, shallow. The woman watched silently, her expression unreadable. Daniel realized then that he was no longer in control. This was no simple act of healing. He had crossed into something sacred, something binding. And now, whatever destiny awaited her, it awaited him too. The chamber fell quiet again, but the silence was no longer empty. It was filled with unspoken weight, with the knowledge that a single choice had changed everything. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. He wanted answers, but one question burned brightest of all. What exactly had he bonded himself to? The chamber was heavy with silence, yet Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He sat frozen on the cold floor, staring at the alien woman whose glowing eyes pierced through him. She breathed slowly, each breath sounding more like a growl than a sigh. Her broken leg still rested at an odd angle, but her focus was not on the pain. It was on him. He remembered her words, broken and halting in his language. Touch means bond. The phrase repeated in his mind like an alarm. He had only wanted to help. But to her, his touch was something far deeper, something binding. Daniel's chest tightened. What had he done? The alien woman suddenly moved again. Her hand shot out, grabbing the floor beside her as if steadying herself. The ship's walls flickered with dim light, glowing in rhythm with the markings still faintly glowing on her skin. It was as if the ship itself was breathing with her. Daniel pushed himself backward, putting a little distance between them. I don't understand, he whispered. I was only trying to help you. Her gaze followed him, sharp and unblinking. Then, with effort, she formed words again. No. Help. Not simple. Her voice cracked, filled with strain. You touched sacred wound. Not allowed. The air grew colder. Daniel's skin prickled as if unseen eyes watched from every corner of the chamber. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wanted to argue, to say he didn't know, but her expression silenced him. Her hand trembled as she reached toward her broken leg. When her fingers brushed against the skin, the glow pulsed brighter. She let out a sound, half pain, half fury, and her eyes flashed. The symbols across her skin spread further, climbing from her leg to her arms, then up her neck. They shimmered like fire trapped beneath glass. Daniel shivered. This was no ordinary reaction to pain. This was something alien, something beyond biology. He had triggered it by touching her. Suddenly, the chamber shook. A deep hum spread through, the walls vibrating the floor beneath them. Panels on the ceiling flickered to life, throwing sharp beams of light across the alien's face. She looked less like a victim now, and more like a queen cloaked in power. Daniel's breath quickened. He could feel it, an energy pressing against him, invisible but heavy. It coiled around his chest, crawling into his veins. His hands trembled as he looked down and realized his own skin was glowing faintly, thin lines of light tracing along his forearms where her hand had touched him earlier. Panic hit him. "What's happening to me?" he demanded, his voice shaking. The alien woman studied him in silence, her glowing eyes unblinking. Then, finally, she whispered, "Bond begins." Daniel staggered to his feet, backing into the wall. His pulse hammered in his skull. "No," he said firmly, though his voice cracked. "I didn't choose this, I didn't—" She cut him off with a look, one so sharp it stopped the words in his throat. "Choice," she said slowly, forcing the human word through her lips. "Gone. Path. Joined." Her words struck him harder than a weapon. He had no choice. Whatever bond she spoke of, it had already begun. The glow on his arms pulsed in time with her breathing. The ship itself hummed in the same rhythm, as though all three, man, alien, and machine, were now tied together. Daniel tried to calm himself, tried to think logically. Maybe it was some kind of technology built into her body. Maybe the armor was sending signals into his skin. But deep down he knew it was not that simple. This was not science as he understood it. This was something older, something primal. The alien woman shifted again, dragging herself upright, despite the broken leg. She leaned heavily against the wall, towering over him. Her armor glowed faintly, the gold edges shimmering with strange light. She pointed a trembling hand at him. "You not leave now. You carry fate." Daniel's mouth went dry. He shook, his head whispering, "No, I can't be part of this." Her eyes blazed, and for the first time, her voice rose like thunder. "You are part." The ship shuddered violently, a loud crack echoing through the walls. Daniel stumbled, grabbing a railing to steady himself. The energy pressing into his chest grew stronger, wrapping tighter, almost suffocating. He stared at her, fear and awe mixing in his veins. She was no ordinary survivor, no ordinary soldier. She was something greater. And by touching her wound, he had stepped into a storm far larger than himself. Daniel's spine tingled as the thought sank deep. This was no accident. The silence of the ship had been waiting for him, and now, there was no going back. The ship's trembling slowed, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. Daniel leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling as if he had just escaped drowning. The alien woman stood across from him, her glowing eyes locked on his, her broken legs still twisted but her presence towering, almost regal. Her voice came low, broken, but firm. "Bond is sacred." Daniel's lips parted. His throat felt dry, words stuck in his mouth. "I don't understand. What bond?" "I was only trying to help you." She shook her head slowly, her hair falling around her shoulders in waves of dark bronze. Her armor cracked as she shifted, but her gaze never softened. "Not help. Touch wound. Sacred act." Daniel frowned, his mind racing. Sacred act? In her culture, did touching an injury mean something deeper? He remembered how her skin had glowed, how strange lines had crawled from her leg to her body and then into him. He rubbed his arms, still feeling the faint hum beneath his skin. Her voice pressed on, heavy with meaning. "You touched. Now you carry piece of me, and I carry piece of you." The words chilled him more than the silence. He tried to deny it, shaking his head. "No, that's not possible. We're not even the same species." But then he saw the faint glow still alive under his own skin, the pulse that matched her breath. His heart sank. Denial meant nothing when his body was betraying him. Daniel's voice cracked. "What happens now?" Her eyes narrowed, sadness flickering for the first time. "Now, fate is tied. My death is your death. My life is your life. Bond cannot break." The weight of those words slammed into him. His stomach twisted and he staggered backward until his shoulders hit the wall. He stared at her, horrified. "You're saying, if you die, I die too?" She nodded once. "Sacred law. Sacred blood." Daniel's breathing quickened. His thoughts spiraled. He had come to this ship as an explorer, a scavenger looking for parts and answers. Instead, he had tied himself to an alien warrior whose fate was bound to his own. But there was something else. Something unspoken in her words. He studied her again. The way she held herself. The way even in pain she radiated authority. "Who are you?" he asked finally, his voice trembling. For a long moment she stayed silent. Then, slowly, her chin lifted. "I am not soldier, not worker. I am ruler." Her voice carried pride now, broken though it was. Leader of worlds, keeper of stars. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He had expected a survivor, maybe a soldier from some lost war. Not this. Not a leader. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You're an empress." Her eyes burned with acknowledgement. She did not confirm with words, but she did not deny either. And in that silence, Daniel felt the truth settle in his chest like ice. He had bonded himself to the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. The ship seemed to echo his realization. Lights along the walls brightened faintly, pulsing with the same rhythm as before. It was as though the vessel itself acknowledged her identity, bending to her will even in its broken state. Daniel took a step back, his breath shaky. "I can't do this, I'm just a man. I don't belong in your war, in your empire, whatever this is." Her gaze sharpened. "No choice. Bond made. You carry my fate, and I carry yours." The words struck again like chains wrapping tighter around his chest. His body trembled with the weight of them. He wanted to run, to escape, but every instinct told him it was already too late. Then suddenly her body weakened. She staggered, clutching her leg, her face twisted with pain. The glow dimmed around her, the symbols fading. Daniel's heart lurched. Despite everything, despite the fear, he rushed forward and caught her before she fell. Her body was heavy, yet fragile in that moment. Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time her expression softened. "You protect me now," she whispered. Daniel froze, his hands trembling as he held her. He wanted to pull away, to deny it. But he felt the bond burning between them, that strange energy threading his veins, echoing her heartbeat. And he knew she was right, whether he wanted it or not. Her survival was now his survival. He lowered her gently against the wall, his voice low. "Then we both have a problem, because if you die, I die too." Her eyes closed briefly, exhaustion clouding her features. "Yes, that is truth." Daniel stared at her, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. But only one thought cut through the noise, one realization that sent another shiver down his spine. He had stepped into a sacred bond with an alien empress, and somewhere beyond the stars her enemies would be coming. The hum of the alien ship grew stronger, as if it had awakened with a heartbeat of its own. Daniel sat against the wall, his breath heavy, his eyes fixed on the alien woman beside him. She was no ordinary survivor. She was a ruler, an empress, of distant stars. And now his life was tied to hers. The glow on his arms had not faded. Thin veins of light still pulsed beneath his skin, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Every time she inhaled, his chest felt tight, as if his body followed her rhythm against his will. He rubbed his arms in frustration, but the glow only brightened. She opened her eyes slowly, her gaze locking on him. Even weakened, her presence was commanding. "You feel it," she said in broken words, her voice low but steady. Daniel nodded unwillingly. "I feel something, like energy inside me. It doesn't belong." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile, but filled with sorrow. "It belongs now. Yours and mine, joined." Daniel shook his head, panic swirling inside. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for it." She tilted her head slightly, watching him as though studying a stubborn child. "Want does not matter. Bond is law. Bond is blood." The chamber trembled again, lights flickering brighter, then dimming. Daniel glanced around nervously. The ship reacts to us, doesn't it? Her eyes narrowed, and she gave a slow nod. Yes, vessel obeys bond, feels bond. You touch me. You touch ship. Power flows through you now. Daniel's mouth went dry. Power. He glanced down at his glowing arms again, then at her broken leg. She was right. Something in him had changed. He could feel it, like a weight pressing against his bones, like sparks waiting beneath his skin. He clenched his fists, fear crawling down his spine. If this bond gives me power, then what does it do to you? Her gaze grew sharp, almost piercing. You are burden. If you fall, I fall. If you die, I die. And I... Her voice broke for a moment, then she steadied it again. I am Empress. Worlds depend on me. I cannot fall. The meaning sank in like a knife. Daniel wasn't just tied to her. He was now the weak link in her fate. One human life could destroy her empire. The weight pressed harder on his chest. He was no soldier, no leader, just a wanderer who had stumbled onto a drifting ship. Now his weakness threatened the survival of an empress. He dropped his head into his hands, whispering, I'm not ready for this. I'm no hero. I fix machines, not people. But her hand rose, trembling yet firm, and pressed against his shoulder. The touch was light, but the bond burned stronger. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, her words carried a strange kindness. No choice. You are chosen now. Burden or not, you carry power. Daniel looked into her glowing eyes, and a shiver ran down his spine. Power. The word echoed inside him, not as comfort, but as warning. The ship's walls pulsed again, brighter. This time, as if to prove her words true, Daniel felt energy surge through him, flowing from her into his veins. For a moment he thought he heard whispers, alien voices murmuring from the walls themselves. His head spun, and he staggered to his feet. What's happening to me? He demanded, his voice shaking. She leaned back against the wall, her expression unreadable. You carry echo of my blood, echo of my throne, that is bond. You cannot undo. Daniel felt heat crawling under his skin like fire trapped in his veins. He stumbled, clutching his chest. His vision blurred, shapes twisting around him. But then suddenly it stopped. The energy faded to a quiet hum, leaving him trembling but alive. He stared at her, horrified. If this is power, then it feels like a curse. She did not deny it. Every power is curse, and every curse is power. Her words lingered in the chamber like smoke. Daniel's body still shook, but her calm voice steadied him. She had lived with this power for years, perhaps centuries. For her, this bond was not a gift. It was a chain. And now, he wore the same chain. He looked at her broken leg again. Despite her strength, despite her title, she was vulnerable now. She needed him as much as he needed her. The realization hit him harder than the glow in his veins. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then we're both trapped in this, both cursed. Her gaze met his, sharp yet weary. Yes, together. The silence between them grew heavy, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with a strange truth. Two lives, once strangers, now bound as one. But deep inside, Daniel felt another weight, one greater than the bond itself. Somewhere out there, beyond the broken ship and the silent stars, her enemies would be searching. And when they found her, they would find him too. The burden was no longer just hers. It was his. And for the first time, Daniel wondered if the bond that tied him to an empress would also drag him into a war that humanity was never meant to face. The alien vessel was no longer silent. The walls hummed with power, lights flickered like distant stars, and the air itself vibrated with unseen energy. Daniel stood at the center of it, his arms still glowing faintly, his chest tight with the weight of everything he had learned. Across, from him, the Empress leaned against the wall, her broken leg bent but her posture unyielding. Even wounded, she radiated command, her glowing eyes never breaking from his. Daniel's thoughts swirled. He had touched her wound. He had bonded with her. His life was tied to hers now. If she died, he died. If she lived, his fate was no longer his own. Her voice broke the silence, low and steady. From this moment, your life is no longer yours. The words cut deep, sharp as a blade. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to protest, to tell her she was wrong. But the glow in his arms answered for him. The bond was real. His body itself betrayed the truth. He shook his head, whispering, "I never asked for this." Her expression hardened. Neither did I. For the first time, he saw something behind her eyes. Not anger, not command, but the faintest shadow of fear. She had not chosen this either. The bond had tied them both against their will. The ship trembled again, the floor rumbling beneath them. Daniel staggered, grabbing a railing. From deep within the vessel came a sound, faint but growing, a signal. The ship was no longer hiding. It was calling. The Empress closed her eyes briefly, her jaw tightening. "They will come now," she whispered. Daniel froze. "Who?" Her gaze met his, cold and sharp. "Enemies. Hunters of my blood. They follow bond. They will find us." His chest tightened. 1,000 questions roared in his mind, but one burned brightest. "And when they find us?" She did not answer right away. The silence stretched heavier than the walls around them. Finally, she said, "Then you will know what it means to stand at my side." The glow on his arms pulsed brighter, the same rhythm as her heartbeat. Daniel pressed a hand against his chest, shivering. It felt like his body was no longer his own, like his blood had been rewritten with something alien, something ancient. His thoughts raced. He was just an engineer, a scavenger. He had no place in her empire, no place in her wars. And yet, fate had pulled him into the center of it. The Empress shifted, pain flashing across her face as she touched her broken leg. She tried to stand, but her body betrayed her. Without thinking, Daniel rushed forward and caught her, his hands steadying her weight. The bond flared instantly, a wave of heat rushing through both of them. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked at him not as a stranger, not as a burden, but as something more. "Our fates are sealed," she whispered. Daniel shivered. He felt the truth of her words deep in his bones. He had come onto this ship as a wanderer, searching for answers. Instead, he had bound himself to an empress, tied his soul to hers, and awakened enemies he could not imagine. The ship's signal grew louder, echoing through the chambers like a heartbeat calling across the void. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, something was already listening. Daniel's breath came shallow, his voice barely a whisper. "What have I done?" The Empress's hand gripped his arm, her strength surprising even in her weakness. Her eyes burned with fire as she said, "You have changed the course of stars." A cold shiver ran down Daniel's spine. He understood. Now there was no going back. His life was no longer his own. It belonged to her, to the bond, to the war waiting in the dark. And as the ship hummed louder, Daniel realized this was only the beginning.